How you doing? Hope everything going well for you. David W. Williams, also known as the Retail Trader. And so what I'm going to talk to you about is Arabs know how to trade and you don't. The power of learning how to trade. And the goal of this video is to try to persuade you that learning how to trade is a skill that you would like to develop because it can be beneficial to you in other areas of your life and can make your life a lot better. And so I'm an example of me learning how to trade and immersing myself in the trading space. It's really improved my life. It's improved my perspective on life. It's given me a lot of confidence in certain areas. And it really took me out of a place in life in which I really didn't feel like I had a lot of options. And I kind of felt like things weren't really going my way. And trading really opened me up to a whole world that I didn't know existed, that I was able to benefit from, and made me very, very optimistic for the future. So one of the things that I'm getting ready to do in the next, let's say, 30 days or less right now, because today's the 4th, I'm going to really focus on trading and really improving my skills as a trader, right? Because I know that there's a lot of opportunity out there that I'm not able to tap into yet because I don't believe I currently have the skill set. I don't believe I have the focus of as of yet. And I want to tap into the opportunity because it can be very beneficial to me and it'll help me accomplish some of the things that I want to accomplish, right? But I can do that because I actually have learned how to trade. So over the past few years, I learned how to trade to where now I can say, okay, I'm getting ready to really, really lock in and focus on trading certain things and not really being caught up with a lot of this other stuff that's going on around me because it's really not about trading and the benefits that I think that I can get from it, right? So that's one of the reasons why I'm an advocate for trading. I'm an advocate for getting people into the space. And I'm an advocate for you learning how to trade because I believe that a lot of the problems that we're being faced with, because we can't look at things a certain way, we can't solve problems. And I'm going to show you an example of a group of people who have way less money than you. They may have less education than you. They may have less technology access than you, but they were able to solve a massive problem because they understood how to look at certain things from a trading perspective, from a financial perspective, and they didn't spend their time on YouTube and on the internet talking. They didn't spend their time on TikTok running their mouth, right? They realized what they needed to do and they got about the solution, right? And so this is what this is for, because I was a person where I was very much disappointed and I was very much frustrated that we were not able to solve certain problems and nobody was coming with us with the training and with the understanding of how to solve problems. It was just more talking and conversation, as if that was the only solution to the problem. Is talking and conversation important? Yes. But many people, they want to talk and conversate their way away from the problem instead of dealing with it. Right? It's the kind of the thing where people want to change good people because they just like to change people, as opposed to trying to change a bad person, because some people just like to change people. That's just their thing, right? So I want you to understand is that this is something I think is really, really important. It's something I'm convicted about, is getting people to accept that, one, they're not as smart as they think they are. And the reason why there's a characteristic of you not being as smart as you think you are is you can't solve certain problems. When faced with certain problems, you either go into a shell like a turtle, or you emote emotionally, and then you normally emote emotionally on the internet in front of people who also don't know how to solve the same problem. So we have networks of people online that don't know how to solve problems, but they just sit around and they just emote all day. And that now becomes their distraction from the problem that's facing them. Okay. So this video is made for people that want to kind of understand, how can I start developing my mind to solve problems, as opposed to how can I just emote on the internet and get into, everything's going to be a focus group and a conversation about stuff. We're never going to go and solve the problem. Okay. So we talked about that. You got the promo for the sale really quickly. In the month of July, the VIP course will be $5,000. So you're getting a 50% discount. This is your best time in the history of the VIP course to get in, because on the first day of July, we're going to raise the price of $5,000. Right. So that's just what it's going to be. And it's going to be $5,000 from here on out. We may run some discounts, but the discount won't be where you're currently at right now, the day for sale price. Okay. So just give you a heads up on that. So what we're going to talk about is, here's some of the non-monetary benefits of being a trader. Okay. The first one is going to be self-control. Okay. Me learning how to trade has given me a great amount of self-control, and I'm constantly working on my self-control more and more every day, because as a trader, if you don't have self-control, you will destroy yourself. Right. And many people, their life is a story of, they build up to a certain point, they sabotage their success. They build up to a certain point, they sabotage their success. They get into a relationship, they build it to a certain point, they sabotage the relationship. They get into another relationship, They get to a certain point, they sabotage a relationship. They do this over and over and over and over again, right? And this becomes the story of their life, right? And they do this until the day they leave the planet. And one thing trading has really taught me is self-control. I can't get moved by everything I hear. I can't get moved by every headline, right? I can't get moved by everything somebody says. So people will say stuff to me and it's like, whatever. And I used to be the person where if you said something to me, it was going to turn into a different type of situation that you know you're not built for. And now people say stuff to me and I'll just sit there and listen to it. Because trading made me develop a certain amount of self-control over my actions to where what I'm doing and how I react is a lot times more important than what the other person's doing. Now, I'm not going to let nobody abuse me or harm me, but I don't get triggered by a lot of stuff like I used to, right? So people that know me now, they got way more leeway than people had 10, 15, 20 years ago, right? I was just a different type of person that wasn't going to go like that. Now, sometimes I can be triggered by certain stuff. I don't like the people around me, but my self-control has gotten way stronger because I learned how to trade. And also, I just know how to disconnect from certain things, right? And that's the self-control aspect. Many people struggle from self-control. They cannot control themselves. They think controlling themselves is cutting everything off. That's not controlling yourself. That's denying yourself, right? I don't smoke weed. I can be around a bunch of weed smokers that don't move me. I don't feel tempted to smoke because I don't smoke, right? I don't drink. I can be around a bunch of drinkers. I never get an urge to drink because why? I don't drink. So I don't have to say, well, you know, I don't indulge in it because that's not what I do. That's my level of self-control. Trading taught me that type of stuff, right? Because when you wake up in the morning, you're going to get a million news articles that are going to come at you. And you got to decide, are you going to stick to your system or are you going to get caught up in that stuff, right? You got the president tweeting stuff all day. You got Elon Musk tweeting stuff. You got people that just essentially, they're trying to figure out how to make money off social media. So they're going to say and do anything they got to do to try to get some traction. You got to be able to filter through all of that and figure out what's really going on. And it takes a large amount of self-control. So if you want to actually be successful as a trader, you have to develop self-control. If not, you will destroy yourself, right? Next one is going to be problem solving, right? Composing a trade is solving a problem, okay? This is really what it is. This is real problem solving. Composing a trade is solving a problem, right? So the goal of a trade, one of the goals of a trade is to generate money into our particular account, right? That's one of the goals. How do I create a structure or model that will allow me to do that, right? So how did I create a structure or model that said I can leverage the demand for smokeless tobacco product and that demand for that to generate alpha into my account? How can I create a structure and a model that would allow me to do that using a trading platform and the money I have in my account and my intelligence and, you know, the information I have accessible to me? How can I go about doing that? And so this is really, really important because one of the things that we're not taught in school and we're not trained to do is solve problems, because that's not our job in society, right? So we're very frustrated with things because we were never taught how to use what's available to us to solve a problem. We just weren't taught that because our role was inside the box that was created by us, by Anglos, is to solve their problems, not solve our problems. So we have been educated to solve Anglo problems, but cannot solve our problems. So again, what we do is we sit and we emote and we talk for circles for 12 hours, right? But our problems never get solved. And our leadership also does not train us how to solve problems because they're taking their cues from another group of people to make sure our problems never get solved. So if you're going to be a successful trader, you have to learn how to create a model to solve a problem. The problem is we want money to go from the market into our account. That's the problem. What kind of model do we need to do that, right? And it takes creative thinking. It takes trial and error. It takes you taking losses. And you got to be able to do that over and over again until you figure it out. And it's not static, it's dynamic. So it's going to change over time, right? But at the end of it, you'll start to get a lot better at actually solving the problem, not talking about it, not brainstorming it, working it through, right? Because it's dynamic. So it's constantly changing. So you can't just brainstorm it and think about it. You can't just come up with ideas. You actually got to go implement it. And that's what's going to separate you from the majority of the population. Let me explain something to you. when you really start to trade on a regular basis, your brain will start to move at a certain level, and you will interact with people and you'll realize that their brain's not really moving at that level, right? Your ability to start to think at a certain level and to start to come up with solutions that you're ready to go implement, and then you'll start to interact with people in society, and you'll realize that they're not tasked with that. So they cannot have to think on that level, and they're still good. Let me give an example. If I don't make money, I lose money, right? If I run a trade and the trade doesn't make money, I'm lucky to leave break even, right? I'm lucky to leave a trade break even if I'm not successful. Normally, I'm going to lose money, right? So every time I'm incorrect on something, I lose money. I don't have a scenario to where I can show up, do tasks, and if I make a mistake, it don't cost me. It costs me. Every mistake I make as a trader costs me, right? So I have to think about what is the most efficient way to go about things. What is the most proactive way to go about things, right? Because if I make enough mistakes, I'm out of the game, right? So my brain has been shaped over the years to look at the world totally different than a lot of people. And I'm not running a multi-million-dollar account. I'm running an account with thousands of dollars in it, right? So this is why when I talk to a lot of y'all, I'm trying to get you to a point to where you start thinking at a different level, because that's really the way you solve problems. First, you got to take ownership. I am responsible for my trading account. I can't blame it on anybody else, right? So if the situation is not going the way I wanted to go, it is what it is. Now, another thing I do that people don't realize is I internalize a lot of things, because I realize most people can't understand where I'm coming from. Because they're in the space to where I can go to work today and not have a bad day, and it don't cost me. If I have a bad trading day, it costs me. If I run a campaign for my business and it don't work, it costs me. Everything costs me. So I'm constantly thinking about how I can solve these problems. I got a problem in my business right now. I'm thinking about how I can solve the problem. But the only way problems get solved is to produce people that have the ability to solve problems. Problems do not get solved. Our problems will never get solved waiting for another group of people to come solve our problems. That has never happened. It's never going to happen. Can some people help us out and look out? Yes. But no successful group in this world where all of their major problems are going to be solved by another group of people. It doesn't work that way. It has never worked that way. It never will work that way, right? So you got to really understand, until you start looking at things a different way, you must like staying right where you're at and just emoting on the internet or emoting amongst your personal circle and believing falsehoods and believing things that are not true just to get through life, right? And then just staying distracted with sex, drugs, rock and roll, the latest gossip, yada, 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 just to make it through. And that's essentially going to be the story of a lot of people's lives. Okay, let's keep going to the next one. Patience. Okay, so here's something that a lot of people don't understand about trading. And I'm not a day trader like that. So I can only trade when the situation presents itself. So that's why trading is not my sole source of income, because trading takes patience. Even as a day trader, there's no guarantee your setup's going to be there. A lot of people wash out of day trading because they try to make a trade every day because that's what they feel like they have to do to make money. But really, really, really good traders are very patient. They sit and wait for the situation to present itself. That's why, again, trading is not my only source of income. The only person that believes is like I say, it's just people that, nobody ever asked them to solve problems, but they got a perspective on everything in the world. Till you really sit down and ask them to solve a problem, and then they don't have any answers. Those are only people that think, well, because you trade, that should be your only source of income. It's that segment of our population, right? You got to have a lot of patience as a trader, because why? What are you waiting for that's going to be the best opportunity for you to make a good trade? And it could take playing a waiting game, right? Just because you want to do something in the market doesn't mean you can. You may have to wait. And you may have to wait. And you may have to wait. The same way in the real estate market, you may have to wait for the situation to present itself. Same way in commercial real estate, you may have to wait. The same way in business, you may have to wait, right? Things may not move when you want it to move. They may move when they move. So being a trader taught me a lot of patience, right? So even though I may be frustrated, I may want to do something faster, I can't do it faster than the situation that's at hand because I'm not in control of that. I have to take it as it comes, right? And trading will teach you that, or else you'll go broke trying to make situations happen when you want it to happen, right? And you don't have the money to move the market. You can't move any market with the kind of money that you have. You can't move real estate, commodities. There's no market you can move. So you got to wait, okay? Being able to see through an issue is really, really important. What separates me from the majority of people that watch this channel that do not trade is I can see directly through an issue. Let me give an example. There's stories out now saying that Palantir is going to get a, I don't know, permission, I don't know if that's a proper word, from Trump to, to put Americans under surveillance. Okay, let me clue you into something. You're already under surveillance. So there's nothing there, right? You're already currently under surveillance. We're all under surveillance right now because we're on the internet. I know some of you think, well, I got a VPN. You can keep believing that, right? You can believe that. That's how they got you to buy it. So you can believe that you're anonymous because you're on the VPN. Trading, if you're going to be a successful trader, especially a swing trader, which is the majority of my trades, you have to be able to see straight through an issue. What I mean is that you got to really actually have to be able to see what is actually going on with the issue, not all this other stuff that don't have anything to do with the issue. And this is where a lot of people struggle because they don't have a process to figure something out. So they go by what somebody else tells them. And we're going to kind of talk about that in this particular video, right? So not being able to see through an issue will negatively impact your ability to solve problems because you can't see straight through it. You don't have a process, you don't have the talent, you don't have the gift, and you don't have a process. So you just go by what you hear in the mainstream. That becomes your process now, right? And so then what happens is you can't figure out, how do I need to look at this to solve a problem? And how do I know this? Because when I ask people, how do we solve this problem? Nobody says anything, which means what? You can't see through it, right? That's the test, right? So you don't have the ability to look at things and see directly through what's actually going on. You go by what somebody told you on TikTok or YouTube or what somebody in your friend group told you, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's true, right? Because often we're seeking out information that confirms what we already believe. So if I want to believe that, there's going to be this ramp up in surveillance because I have this pessimistic view on whatever, I will believe the story about Palantir. I don't realize that I'm already under surveillance, right? This ain't nothing new. I was watching a documentary earlier today about this dude. I think he was in Kansas City. So he's a serial killer, Anglo dude. You know how they caught him? Because they caught his car in Home Depot. This was early 2000s, right? Many of you don't realize how long we've been under surveillance. You're currently right now under surveillance. If you got a cell phone, you're always under surveillance. You go to sleep at night with that cell phone on, you're under surveillance, right? So when you can see straight through the issue, you can actually see what's going on. You can actually see what the actual leverage point of the situation is, not what all these other people are saying who also can't see through the issue. They're just saying stuff. Many people make decisions based on heuristics, they don't make decisions based on the process. Right? That's just because that's the easiest way for them to make decisions, and it doesn't make their brain have to do a lot of work, so they can save their brain power for doing the things that they think are pleasurable. Because sometimes sitting in a room and thinking about difficult things can be very tiring to a lot of people. So who wants to do that? Right? So these are some of the non-monetary benefits of trading, not just the benefits of trading. I really believe that this space will develop you as a person. I really believe that this space will empower you and give some examples of that. Because again, you got to start when you can finally come to the realization and you can come to the truth that you're not as smart as you think you are, that you're not as smart as Anglos told you are, and you often don't have the ability to solve the problems in your particular group. And then now you want to do something about it. A door is going to open. It's going to bring you to a whole different world. Right? But as long as you're still believing these falsehoods, right, that door is never going to open. Right? And you can be cool with that. You can have a house, a car, some of you, right? It'll be difficult as more and more time goes on. You can have relationships. Again, they're going to give you all the drugs, porn, and all the entertainment that you can get. That's real cheap in this economy. So that'll distract you from these other things, and you let them run the world, right? That's how this game plays. So what we're going to talk about is this particular story of Arabs, if I pronounce that right, know how to trade, and you don't know the power. The power of learning how to trade. So Arabs know how to trade, you don't, and the power of learning how to trade. So let me tell you my currency exchange story real quick, because we're going to talk about this. Years ago, I went overseas. And so I realized, okay, I'm going to land in this other country and I need some of their currency just in case I got to move around, right? Because what I realized is that with my credit card, even though I can bank over there, they're making me pay a fee for a currency exchange rate in this other country. So I say, let me get some currency of this foreign country. So just in case I got to move around a little bit, I got something to work with. So I went to Wells Fargo. This is not an advertisement for Wells Fargo. This is not a sponsored post. I'm just letting you know the name of the bank. There's a Wells Fargo and the Metro on Roswell going north towards Alpharetta, right? So Wells Fargo right there on the left-hand side. Exchange USD for this foreign currency, okay? Went to the foreign land, you know, did what I had to do, moved around, and the foreign currency essentially was in paper notes. It got broken down over time to coins, right? So made my moves, did what I had to do, came back stateside, right? Came back stateside, went back to the Wells Fargo and tried to exchange that back to USD. They wouldn't let me do it. They told me, you got to go to the airport to exchange it. So they took my USD, gave me a foreign currency, but would not take the foreign currency back for the USD. Says you got to go to a currency exchange. There's one downtown, but there's also one at the airport. Well, I want to go drive all the way to the airport just to exchange that currency. So I just left it, right? But I realized that there was not a market to take that foreign currency and exchange it back into USD in my local area. They wanted me to go all the way to Hartsfield, which is way south of me. Then I got to get into the airport, got to pay the park. It'd have been a headache. So I was like, forget about it. It wasn't like it was $1,000. But I want you to kind of understand this was an issue, right, of a currency scenario. This was an issue of exchange rates. This was an issue of currency markets. And I had to try to figure out how to navigate these particular currency markets, right, to get what I needed to get. So let me show you this article real quick, because I want you to really understand that we have a segment of people in the world, and they had a very, very complex problem, right? They had a very, very complex problem. They have to finance a organization they're a part of, right? And they're in a world where their currency doesn't have a lot of value. There's a lot of currency restrictions. There is a, how do I say, there's restrictions on how they move currency in a particular area. So they had to get very, very creative on how to solve the problem. But not only did they have to have the idea, they had to implement it, which is where you're going to lose 95% of people. And then they also had to understand the logistics of it, because there's a lot of moving pieces and it involves people. So it's not just electronic where you just sit on the computers and just, you know, hit buttons, right? So let's go and get into this article real quick, because I want to show you what I'm talking about. So this is from the Journal. So Iraq was a minor market for Visa, MasterCard years ago, generating 50 million a month or less in cross-border transactions at the start of 2023. So that number exploded to 1.5 billion in April that year. So that was a 2,900% increase almost overnight, right? So then the question is, what changed to make those numbers really started to go up? So Iraq militia groups figured out how to squeeze dollars on an industrial scale from Visa and MasterCard's payment networks for themselves and for their allies in Iran, according to U.S. and Iraqi officials, and documents reviewed by the Wall Street Journal, right? So the shift in the cards came after the U.S. Treasury and the Federal Reserve Bank of New York in late 2020 shut down a loophole used for fraud, which was international wire transactions by Iraqi banks that lacked money laundering safeguards. So flaws in that system created by U.S. during the occupation of Iraq around Iran and the militia groups to support its access to billions of dollars in more than a decade. So once the U.S. closed that spigot, and that was being closed by the Federal Reserve Bank in New York, that's going to come up later, right? Militias quickly found a way to profit from the card scheme. So the U.S. payment giants helped fuel the boom by signing up Iraqi partners to issue MasterCard and Visa-branded cash and debit cards, offering them financial incentives to boost transaction levels, right? In some cases, the Iraqi issuers have militia ties and inadequate fraud controls in a country known for rampant corruption, documents show. So here's what I want you to understand. This is going to be the setup. A person in Iraq acquires prepaid or debit cards, which for international transactions are charged at an official exchange rate of 1320 dinar per dollar. Okay, so repeat that. A person in Iraq acquires prepaid or debit cards, for which international transactions are charged at the official exchange rate of 1320 dinar per dollar. Huge quantities of cars are smuggled out of Iraq to UAE, Jordan, Turkey, or elsewhere. Then now, based on the flow chart, scammers outside Iraq withdraw cash from ATMs, or scammers get foreign retailers to run fake transactions and to give them cash in exchange for a kickback, or scammers use handheld point-of-sale machines to process fake transactions themselves, hiding their locations on virtual private networks. Okay, so these are the three ways. Okay, then the dollars move back to Iraq through informal Hawala money transfer networks or electronically. There, the money exchanged for dinars at the higher rate in Iraq's currency markets, yielding as much as 21% more than the official rate. Then the process is just repeated. So they just rinse and repeat this over and over and over and over again. Okay, so this is how these particular groups were able to finance their activities, because they was able to take advantage of two things. The official rate, right, which is this rate right here. So it was 1320 with the article. Now it's 1310. $1 is 1310 Iraqi dinar, right? And then also the unofficial rate, which are two different things. Okay. And so these are the questions. Let me get rid of that. These are the questions we want to ask ourselves, right? So what they're doing is something called non-simultaneous arbitrage. Okay. So we look up the definition of arbitrage from a financial standpoint. They're going to talk about buying and selling something simultaneously, which means at the same time. What they were able to leverage is, we're going to buy this, but in exchange it at a later date. But we're going to take advantage of the difference between the official rate, which is what is being shown, and the unofficial rate through what we call black markets. Okay, let's go a little bit deeper into it, right? So here is Iraq business news, right? Why Iraq has two exchange rates. All right, this is 2024. So this is a webinar by the Iraq Britain Business Council, guy from Lehigh University. He wanted to explain the cause and effects of Iraq's dual exchange rate, right? So let me go here. Let me get rid of this. First reason, three reasons why Iraq has two exchange rates. Excessive demand for US dollars internationally, right? High demand for US dollars in countries like Iran and Syria, where local currencies have significantly devalued. Currency devaluation in neighboring countries. Iranian rial has lost 75% of its value due to sanctions from the US, other nations. The Syrian pound has lost 99% of its value due to ongoing civil war, right? So these significant devaluations have led entities in Iran and Syria to seek more stable currencies like the US dollar. So asking you a question, you're sitting at home right now. Your currency loses 75% of its value. What do? Except go on the internet and complain about it on TikTok. Your currency loses 99% of its value, but you still need to finance operations. What do you do besides go on TikTok and complain about it? Right? Because this is what they're dealing with. Preference for physical dollars, right? There's a particular demand for physical US dollars rather than electronic funds. Physical dollars are preferred because they're accepted everywhere. They are impossible to trace, making them more desirable for transactions that may need to avoid scrutiny. Cheaper source for dollars in Iraq. So due to the devaluations, economic instability, Iran and Syria find it more feasible to obtain dollars from Iraq. The Iraq market offers a cheaper source of dollars, requiring fewer real resources compared to other regions. Then bullet point 2, internal demand for dollars, dominance of the dollar, right? Historically, the US dollar has dominated the Iraqi dinar both as a medium of exchange and as a store of value. This dominance means that people prefer to use and hold dollars over local currency, contributing to the internal demand for dollars. Regulatory changes, economic practices, banking system challenges, right? Number 3, de-dollarization efforts by the New York Fed. We talked about this earlier. The New York Federal Reserve has restricted dollar transfers to reduce dollar flows to Iran and Syria. They have excluded over 24 Iraqi banks from transactions, which has increased the complexity and demand for dollars in Iraq. Okay, so this was a trade based on the fact that we have these other states in which their currencies have lost a large amount of value. They have to figure out, how do we, right, solve this particular problem, right? Well, we know that we can use Iraq, we can use MasterCard and also Visa, we can use debit cards, and then we can run this particular process right here, which is extremely creative, right? To be able to fund these cards, right? Go out to other parts of this particular region, UAE, Jordan, Turkey, or elsewhere. Withdraw cash from ATMs. I know about this where you get to get fake transactions to get cash for it in exchange for a kickback. People used to do it with physical stuff. Now they're doing just fake transactions, right? Or use handheld point of sale machines to process fake transactions, right? Then you move those dollars back to Iraq, right? Through these particular exchanges. And then you exchange them now for dinars because of the exchange rate through the unofficial market. So they're getting a 21%, right, yield on what they're doing. Now, this takes a lot of parts, a lot of moving pieces, right? A lot of people got to stay down, right? There's going to be a churn because people are going to start, they're going to quit, yada, yada, yada. But if you can get enough people to do it and we can actually create some momentum with it, it can actually work. And it worked. They was doing it. Okay. So this is what I'm talking about. Trying to figure out how do we solve problems, right? And not think that the solution to it is to complain about it on social media. Because nobody was coming to solve this problem for these groups of people. We know Iran is under severe economic sanctions from the West, right? We know that Syria has had their country pretty much ravaged by war, but even before then, they really weren't doing that great. Okay, they're kind of being held up by Russia. So we need to finance these particular operations. How do we go about doing it? Okay, next question. Unofficial markets, because we're talking about going into the unofficial market. So what made this arbitrage really work and what made this trade really successful is that we were able to go into the unofficial markets. Do any of you know what a bootlegger is? And I will give people time for the actual video to catch up. Do any of you know what a bootlegger is? My bad on that. So big up to Ori. Sold alcohol during Prohibition. Someone who sells goods that are illegal by law. A person who makes, distributes, or sell goods illegally. Person that makes knockoff goods. It can be applied to any any black market. Unlicensed retailer, right? Someone selling something illegal. Someone who makes, distributes, sells goods. Okay, that makes sense. So in this particular example, what we're talking about a bootlegger is we're talking about just going to the unofficial markets that are really not licensed or really not regulated by the central banks or by government in exchanging currency. But if we don't have the concept of what a bootlegger is, so let me give an example. There's places in this country, not as much anymore, but there were what we call dry counties, where the county ordinance wouldn't allow them to sell alcohol either at all or certain days, right? Sometimes past certain times of night. So there were people in the actual city. You saw this more like rural areas where you could go to them to get alcohol, right? When I first moved to Cobb, you couldn't get alcohol past Saturday at a certain time. It was like a city ordinance or a county ordinance where they wouldn't sell it to you. So if I just really, really had to get it, I would have to find me a bootlegger, right? But what we call bootlegger, where I'm from, is pretty much anybody that you can get something illegal or contraband, right? Which are goods you're not supposed to have by law, through some type of unofficial channel. So you just may know somebody that lives somewhere, they may have it. You may just know somebody through your networks that may have it. That's what we call a bootlegger. So yeah, I think initially the term was used for alcohol, but now it pretty much means pretty much anybody that has contraband. So looking at this particular currency market right here, this may not be an official currency market. This may be what we call the unofficial market, where we can exchange dollars for dinars. And because the demand for dollars is so high in Iraq, we can get a higher rate than what we can get through a traditional financial institution, because they may ask questions if we keep coming in there trying to exchange, right, dollars for dinars. They may ask us to fill out certain type of paperwork, yada, yada, yada. Where through these particular type of platforms, we don't have to worry about that. They just want the money because they want the dollars, because there's a really, really strong demand for dollars in Iraq. So this is where the trade comes from, right? This is how the trade gets composed. We know there's a demand for dollars in Iraq. We know there's a discrepancy between the official market and the unofficial market, right? And then we know that we can go outside of Iraq, go into these other countries. We can launder this money, was essentially what we're doing. We can launder this currency, take it, put it into another form, bring it back into Iraq, and then we can get, 15, 20, 21% increase on it. And then we can use that to finance our operations, because where we're currently at, our currencies have very little to no value for a lot of different reasons, right? So when you start thinking like a trader, one, you understand how the financial markets work. You understand what arbitrage is, and then you can stay focused and locked in and do what you got to do. Because I don't know any successful traders where their mind is all over the place. That's why Buddy had to get a timeout, because we weren't even talking about that, right? I don't know any successful traders where they cannot stay focused on what we're doing at the current time. And we can move from situation to situation, but when you're trying to put together a trade, you got to lock in, right? You just have to. Because if we're trying to do this type of operation, we got to be focused on this operation, because there's a lot of moving parts to it, right? So that's what I want you to understand, is that this group of people were able to solve a relatively complex problem by a lot of creative thinking, but also understanding how financial markets work, right? And they may not have the education that you have. They may not have the access to technology that you have, but it was so necessary that if we're going to generate money for what we're trying to do, we got to figure out how to solve this problem. And the opportunity existed in their area, right? So if the opportunity doesn't exist, they can't solve it, but the opportunity existed. Heads up, and I don't want to sidetrack it. They're doing this exact same thing with gold out of Africa into the Middle East. And it's on a level that most people can't even wrap their head around. They're doing this exact same thing with gold leaving Africa and going into the Middle East. And it's on a level that most average person can't wrap their head around. And it's going on every day, all day, right? So because the opportunity exists, right? Because the opportunity exists, people figured out, how can we utilize this opportunity to solve our particular problems? Okay, let's go to the next one, right? How does this example support or not support the idea that the dollar has no value? Okay. You hear through certain YouTubers, I put this also in the VIP course, this idea that the dollar has no value and that the dollar's going down. But what we see is that in these lands, the dollar really is the only currency that has value. So when we're talking about the dollar having no value, right? And this is the exchange rate, they'll look at you like you're crazy. But when we don't really understand how markets function, we may not understand that it may not be that the dollar has no value. It may be that assets, right, are inflating, right, at such an aggressive rate that we can't accumulate enough dollars to get the assets, right? But nobody wants to have that conversation, because I live in a metro area, and I'm going to talk about that tomorrow, where the average home price 2025 Zillow's $325, $350. It's really not that the dollar's losing value, it's that assets are accumulating at such an aggressive pace. You need a large amount of dollars just to get the assets. right? So, but we don't want to tell people that because they'll start to feel bad about it. They want to just blame the dollar and they want to blame the Federal Reserve. Well, how come that's not a problem for Bill Gates? How come that's not a problem for Arthur Blank out here in the metro? He don't have a problem with his dollars being inflated because he got so many of them, right? So because we really don't understand really asset valuation, we don't really understand how currency markets actually work. We buy into the idea that the dollar has no value. It got a value in Iraq because this scheme doesn't work if the dollar doesn't have any value. This scheme doesn't work. This scheme doesn't work if the dollar has no value, right? So even with all the printing of currency, this scheme doesn't work if the dollar doesn't have any value. And he just explained in this particular scenario, right, that, where is it at? Physical dollars are preferred because they're accepted everywhere and possible to trace, making them more desirable for transactions, right? Devaluations have led Iran and Syria to seek more stable currencies like the US dollar. Entities in these countries are desperate to obtain dollars because they're accepted everywhere and difficult to trace, right? So yeah, you'll hear a random story about Tanzania wanting to try to get people off the dollar to utilize their currency, right? But how many people are going through Tanzania? The majority of places in the world, they'll accept US dollars if you have them. There's very few places in the world where they won't accept US dollars. Very few, right? So I want to really get you to ask yourself, how come these particular examples either support or do not support the idea that the dollar has no value that people have been saying on YouTube for 500 years? Okay, let's keep going. When speaking about currency, the currency markets are always going to be the litmus test, right? When we start talking about currency, don't even listen to me. Look at the currency market, right? When that story came out a year ago, when they were claiming that the Saudi Arabians were going to stop transacting for oil in the dollar, I said, well, how come the Forex markets haven't reacted to it? Right? I don't go by what a YouTuber tells me. We're talking about the currency markets. If Saudi Arabia was going to stop doing oil transactions in dollars and join BRICS, even though there is no BRICS currency, right? So again, we're going back to the currency markets, right? There is no BRICS currency. If it is, let me know what it is, right? How come we're not seeing a reaction in the currency markets? So what I'm supposed to believe, and we're going back to this again, being able to see through an issue. I'm supposed to believe that a YouTuber, right? A guy that just makes YouTube videos based on trending topics, right? He knows more about Forex markets and the currency markets, and he has a better model than the people that trade this day in and day out, and they do millions of dollars every day in doing Forex trades. He knows more than them, right? I'm not saying he's wrong. I'm just saying I'm supposed to believe that because he's telling me that the dollar is over because so nobody else in the foreign markets is reacting to that. So this is why I talked about being able to see through an issue. That is a ridiculous assessment because I believe that the people that trade Forex day in and day out, not based on the size of what they do, but the people that actually do this, they know more about Forex markets than people that just make YouTube videos about trending topics. I'm going to believe that. I don't care if you're a Forex trader and you got a $5,000 account. If you trade Forex on a regular basis, you're more in tune to the currency markets than the guy that just makes YouTube videos on trending topics. So he's a financial YouTuber, but he just makes trending topics. You could be a Forex trader with a $5,000 account on margin. So you really don't have 5,000, you got 5,000 on margin. You know more about the currency markets than that guy does because why? You trade the currency markets. I'm going to listen to you before I listen to him because you're actually in the market. So what I want you to understand is when speaking about currency, the currency market's going to always be the litmus test, right? Go look at the currency markets. How are they reacting, right? Because that's really what's going on, right? What somebody's saying on YouTube is not what's going on. What the doomsday guys are saying is not what's going on. Go look at the market, right? Same thing with the real estate guy, right? You go to the Miami market, you tell me that we're going to have a real estate crisis. Go to the Miami market. I know a guy trying to buy a house out in that area right now today. He got 180,000 cash and people ain't talking to him. And he willing to put 180 cash up and people ain't entertaining that. He's not trying to get it financed. He wanted to give you 180 and finance the back end. And people not even entertaining that man based on the numbers he's trying to get in at. That's how robust that market is. Right? So what is the market saying as opposed to what somebody said? You shouldn't even listen to me. Go look at the market. The goal of a lot of what I do is to get you to be able to understand how to look at markets. Don't go by what I say because I could be wrong. The market's going to tell you what the price is. It's going to tell you what the demand is, and it's going to tell you what the appetite is. Right? Because I could be wrong. So that's what I want you to understand. Now we're going to transition to this next particular part of it. So looking at the whole market through the eyes of the trader, right? So I'm going to give you scenes in the movie. I'm not going to give you the whole movie. Okay? So I'm going to give you scenes in the movie. I'm not going to give you the whole movie. Because I know a lot of people, they get scenes in the movie. They think they got the whole movie, though. I'm going to repeat myself. I'm going to give you scenes in the movie, but I'm not going to give you the whole movie. Okay? So I had a scenario where I put a bid in for a property. Now, I come in thinking like a trader, but this is a different market than what I normally operate in, right? So let me give you an example of what I mean. I trade electronically. I don't know the other person on the other side of the trade, okay? So again, I trade electronically. I don't know the other person on the other side of the trade. Right? In the real estate market, especially the residential real estate market, where you're buying individual homes, it's more about the relationship between the agent and the relationships they have in the market. Right? That's why agents try to build up a name and try to build up a reputation in a particular market. Right? That's why, like, where I'm at, Mark Spain dominates the market because he's such a big name out here. Right? So me, because I know how to trade, we never meet the ask unless we have to. What I mean by that is that if the ask is $100, we never meet the ask. We always come under. Why? Why would I meet the ask? Right? Unless I'm aggressively trying to buy it, we never meet or go above the ask. We always bid under the ask. So where I'm from, we talk about you're going to normally buy around the ask and sell on the bid. Okay? But I know I'm working with somebody else and they know the market better than me. So I put in an offer on something and I didn't want to put it in at the ask, but we decided that's what we were going to do. So I fell back to their experience and expertise in a particular area. Okay. And then what happened is they pulled the offer back because what they wanted to do was change some of the conditions of the offer. And I didn't agree with that. Right. Because when they changed the conditions of the offer, because I'm in the markets on a regular basis, I knew there was two things going on. There's the issue of cap financing. They were having a financing issue, or they were having a liquidity issue. Based on what they asked me to do, and we were deliberating over it, I said either they're having an issue of capitalization, right? I'm sorry, they're having an issue of financing, or they're having an issue of liquidity. It's only two ways because of what they were asking me to do as part of the terms of the offer, right? And so because I come in as a trader, I was able to bring that perspective into the situation. And then the situation didn't go the way we thought it was going to go because that's actually what was going on, right? And so what I want you to understand is that when you look through stuff as a mind of a trader, you see these markets differently because you already know, because you're trading on a regular basis, you're already intuitive the markets, you already know what is normally going on with the situation. When they kind of asked me to change some of the dynamics of the offer to fit them, I said, okay, I told my agent, I said, okay, they're having an issue with capitalization. I'm sorry. They're having an issue with being financed, or they're having an issue with liquidity. And what it really was the terms of their financing. So because of the terms of their financing, they wanted me to change some of the terms of the particular offer without me getting all the way into it because I don't want to put all their business in the street. Another scenario. Again, we talked about not meeting the ask as a trader. There's a home that I like, but it's not at a price that I like. So I asked my agent, can we do this? I say, can we just put an offer in at a certain number and tell them if you get to that number, we'll buy it? Because in the stock market, what you can do is you can put in a buy offer or a bid, right, at a certain number. So let's say the stock is $100. You can put a bid in at $80. And you can say, hey, I want to accumulate X amount at $80. And if the price falls at $80, it'll execute it, right? Because we got conditional orders right now that can do that. So I told her do the same thing with this property. Let those people know if the price ever gets to this number, we'll buy it. I just don't want to buy it at the current number that it's at. And this is a guy to where, for whatever reason, he don't want to sell it under a certain number. The property's been on the market for over 100 days, right? But it's his property. He can do what he want to do with it. He's not tripping like that. He's probably not pressed to sell it right now. But because I'm looking things as the eyes of a trader, my perspective on it is deeper than house price and, it got stainless steel appliances, right? Because I spend a lot of time in the markets, I can understand a lot of times what people's motivation is when they're trying to compose these deals. Now, I'm a more aggressive person than the real estate person I'm working with. But again, I'm used to trading through an electronic device where you don't know who the other person is on the other end of the device. She's used to working person to person with people. So I can understand she should not destroy her relationships just because I want to undercut stuff. She should not do that, because when I'm done, she still got to work in this market. So I'm falling back to her leadership in the area and saying, okay, how do you think we should do this? Because you got experience and you got relationships in this space. As opposed to me, I wouldn't meet anybody's ask. I would come at $20,000 under everybody's ask and just see what happens, right? And then I would keep calling the agent until they say, hey, we just don't want to do business. That's what I would do, because my attitude is, why would I meet the ask, right? Because I believe this stuff is overvalued anyway. That's my personal opinion. Now, I don't believe it's going to crash. I just believe it's overvalued. I believe people's perception of the value of what they sell it is kind of off, right? But again, because I spent so much time trading, I look at things differently. You can't just roll me to a property, right? And because they did some landscaping and there's some stainless steel furniture inside of it, right? I'm sold on it. That's not even what I'm looking at. I'm looking at, what's going to be all the cost associated with it so I can know how much I got to pay per month. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? So this is why I really want to encourage you, right? To start looking at things like a trader. Start trying to understand how you can really solve problems. Because as we start going deeper and deeper into the future in this country, it's going to be the groups of people that can solve problems that not only can come up with ideas, but can implement, can build out groups of people. Everybody got a role to play. Everybody got a position, right? And cannot get distracted and caught up in the noise, which is going to always be there. In fact, it's going to be more noise in 5 years than we currently got right now, right? You think this election is crazy. The next election going to make this thing look like a walk in the park. Trust me when I tell you that. And if you can start really surrounding yourself with people that this is really what they want to do, not that they caught up in the emotion of it, not that they're just feeling a certain way right now, that this is really what they want to do. Everything you've seen me do over the past 5 years is what I really wanted to do. All the instructing and the teaching and me trying to get people to the markets because I really wanted to do it. If I can multiply myself times 5, we could take over this whole state, right? But you got to have people that really, this is really what they want to do. They don't have to do the same thing, but they really got to want to do it. I'm telling you that the sky's the limit for you and your people, right? Because you will move by the people that everything is the latest story. Everything is the latest TikTok, right? Everything is the latest YouTube thing. You'll blow by those people because they're distracted. You'll blow right by them. Right. And I really want you to understand that a lot of people are not where they think they are. A lot of people are not as smart as they think they are. They're not as good as they think they are. And they go to rabbit holes on the internet to confirm what they already believe about stuff so they can feel better about stuff. And it's not going to change nothing in their life. Right. So that's what I want to really encourage you to do. I'm telling you, it don't take much. It does not take much. You just like what we saw with these particular people over here doing this type of stuff. It just takes a small group of people that got a high level of conviction around what they're doing, and they're willing to walk out their house every day and get to it, right? They realize you can't do everything on the internet. They willing to wake up every day, walk out their house and get to it, which means what? You're going to miss certain TV shows, right? You're going to miss this, you're going to miss that, but they got to do something because they've lost 95% of the value of their currency. So they can't finance operations if they just sit back and wait, right? And they're in conflict with other groups. So they got to do something because they need money for operations, right? So that's what I want you to understand. We're going to read these comments and we're going to get up on out of here because we at almost an hour. So Emeka, man, appreciate the $2 super chat. We appreciate the $5. Psychology, a huge thing in training. I currently fight myself with that trade specifically with greed and patience. It is real, real big. You know, psychology is very, very big. That, to me, that's what defeats most people. Ori, man, appreciate you coming through and being a member. Big up the VA. So Pharaoh Mansa, currently reading about geopolitics, political science. So big up to you, man, for reading, right? So blessings to you for just reading, you know, just in general. So GC says your mother got the house for half off the list of rules that said we don't want to insult him. Well, mom said, is it you and me paying for the house? They took the offer. Now it's 3 times what you paid. I feel you. Big up to your mother for putting in a good bid. AWB says house, $500,000 house in Kansas City is crazy, but it's the market. Most definitely. AKWB, you know what time it is, right? Miami real estate is just ridiculous. And it's not going to go down, bro. Like it's just, and here's the thing about it, AKW, Miami is flood prone. And the property still won't go down. So it's just this idea to where like, but again, if it's whatever, you know, I feel, you know, I just hope God show, you know, open up a door for some of these people. But there's a lot of angst in the market because people don't have it. So they latch on to the idea that it really can't be that bad because everybody's going to be in the same boat as me in the future. And that's not necessarily true. But that's what they latch onto. So people show up to tell them that. Where things, everybody's going to be in the same boat as the people that are locked out of the housing market because the whole market is going to crash. But that's not going to go, it's not going to go that way for most people. So BRICS is selling trades in their own currency. So Warrior Code, do me a favor. Show me where BRICS currency is created at. So where does it come from? So BRICS has a currency. What's the name of the currency and who actually creates the currency? When you get a chance to do that. Right? I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying I don't know about it. So when you get a chance, show me what's the name of the BRICS currency. Like you said, BRICS is selling trades in their own currency. So what's the name of the currency? And then who creates the currency? Does BRICS have a central bank that creates the currency? Is it coming from a bank from one of the nation states? Is it just coming out of a computer program? Like when you get a chance, because one of the challenges we have is that people say things and we don't necessarily know if it's true. So then we can't build off of that. So when you get a chance, you know, can you do those two things for me, please? What's the name of the BRICS currency? What is the country that's producing the currency, right? That they're settling trades in their own currency. Because I don't know the name of the BRICS currency. So Drop 16 says the demand is so high, probably few native to the country are going to be against it the same way most people are indifferent to speakeasy in the USA. Yeah, Brandon Leslie, not off the top of my head, I don't. That's a great question, but not off the top of my head. So Roscoe says it wouldn't make sense for current countries that far apart regionally have a currency area. I just need the name of it. I'm not talking about you, Roscoe. I just need the name of the BRICS currency. Because when you ask these things, people stop talking. You know what I'm saying? So you got to wonder what's the motivation for some of this stuff. That's why I tell people, like, they know they can't get to me, so they're going to try to get to y'all. Because they know I'm pushing a line. I'm a line pusher, came on here I'm not going to be distracted. So they can't get to me, so what they do is they're going to come try to get to y'all. So that's what I'm trying to ask, because people, they're seeded, and then, again, what's the name of the BRICS currency? So BRICS is an organization. Really, it's old, but what's the name of the currency? If they're printing a currency, right? So that's the thing. So that's why I just tell y'all, man, y'all got to watch out, because they know they can't get to me. You'd be surprised some of the stuff they done tried. They done sent all kind of folks at me, and none of it ain't work. So the goal is not to get to y'all, and they doing that to some other people I know, right? Some other people in the same space that's doing their thing. They can't stop them. So what they doing is they coming after us, which is the people in their audience, because I know somebody on social media, and I'm telling you, man, they got like 30 people imitating their page, and they keep popping up on social acting like they this person, right? So that's what they do. When they realize they can't get to you, then they say, well, let's get after your people. That's their trick. That's how they break organizations. So that's why I tell y'all got to watch out, man, because they done came at me. People, all kind of stuff done happened. None of it ain't work. So they coming after y'all next. Right? So you see, but it still ain't came through with the BRICS currency name. So just watch out for that type of stuff. Historically, houses never went down. The reason houses are more difficult to buy is wages. Definitely. So asset values are just shot to the roof. And Mr. Stangel, I doubt they go back down. Very unfortunate. I would tell any young person or even middle-aged person, do not move into Atlanta Metro if you don't make $100,000 or more and you're single. Don't move here. Right? Don't move here. I would tell you that. Right? Don't move here. Right? I would tell you that. Do not move here, because asset values are so high as an individual person. If you're not making six figures, it can be very difficult to do anything. So you could, rent an apartment, but that's going to be about it. That's going to be about the extent. Right? And I don't see asset values going down. I see a little bit of movement in them because, like I said, I think things are overpriced. But I think the days of us seeing $200,000 houses are over. And I don't think they're ever coming back. Because I was looking at houses in Albany, Georgia. You may not know where that's at. That's the sticks, bro. It's the sticks. Right? And sticks means like it's way, way, way out in the country. So where you're currently at, I don't know if y'all have anything equivalent to it, but like Albany, Georgia is the sticks. They want $250,000 to $300,000 for houses out there. And there's nothing out there. Right? Right. Albany is probably closer to Florida than it is to Atlanta. Right. So that's just the world we live in. There's really nothing in Orlando, Florida under $300,000. And I'm talking about in the bad areas. It's hard to find something under $300,000. You got to go way to like the beaches of Florida, like Daytona, Sarasota, the really small markets, to get something between like $250,000 and $300,000. So we're going to a lender at 6%. You got to come in with really good credit. And then you got to hope that you can find something under a certain price point, because they're only going to finance you for so much. Right? So I would tell anybody, single person, it can be real rough moving into this metro and you ain't making six figures. Right? And I mean $100,000 or more. Because it's easier with another person because y'all can get finance off both incomes. But everybody not together. So that's the trick they ran on us, is they got a lot of people to split up. And then now asset values went up, and now it's harder to get those assets as an individual person. Right? So it is what it is. So big up to all my married people, because y'all got the cheat code. What's up to Mr. Russell saying, my concern about BRICS is the lack of legal infrastructure that would ensure outcomes that are always tilted towards the government. Yeah, Russell, you know, BRICS has been around over a decade. It's not anything new. And if they really were going to move against it, they would have. And two, there's not a president inside our country that will let those countries come in opposition to the dollar, and there won't be a severe repercussion to their economy. That's just the game that's being played. So they got to figure something else out, because America's very much trying to stagnate the development of other countries. I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying that's what they're doing. But BRICS gets a lot of traction, a lot of these alternative areas, you know, because it's a way in which they make content, but it doesn't match up to the currency markets. I just look at the currency markets. I don't argue with people. You know, I can go pull up right now on my trading view, all the major currency pairs, yada, yada, yada. And that's really what's going on, right? Is looking at the currency pairs. That's really what's going on. All the rest of this stuff is just content. You know, it's content. But big up to them people. And big up to Russell. Brandon says, you was in Cumberland last week and so much money coming in. It's crazy. There's money coming in everywhere. So your tech homeboy says, I barely got a $300,000 home in Dallas years ago. Those days are over. Yeah. I feel you. But you got that. You was married when you got that. You got that as a single person. If you don't mind me asking, I ain't trying to get into your personal business. You need to go to Ocala. I've been telling people to go to Ocala, even though that's the sticks. Daytona, too. I was looking at stuff in Daytona or Deltona. There's most people never heard of. What about New Smyrna, if I pronounce that correctly? What about Cocoa? You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of coastal towns. I ain't looked at their prices. What about Cocoa, New Smyrna? You got stuff south of St. Augustine, right? Look at all them little small coastal towns that nobody realized. Like I said, Cocoa. No, nobody really want to live in Cocoa like that. You know? So yeah, I've been telling people about Ocala because you ain't got to worry about getting flooded. Okay, so I see you just like to say stuff. So you were married, yes, I'm saying. So it's easier, tech homeboy, I think, when you're married because you can get qualified off 2 incomes, right? In this particular market where I'm at, 325 is the average sales price for Zillow for last month, 2025. So if a person's making $50,000, $60,000, it's going to be very difficult for them to get qualified at $300,000. It's going to be difficult, right? And then you get qualified at anything. You're getting qualified at 6%, right? If you're lucky, maybe 7%, kind of based on how that's going to work. So again, when we don't really understand markets, we get down rabbit holes that don't really solve problems. One of the biggest problems is that asset values have just gone up. They're not going to go down. Unless people move to like really, really, really rural areas. I was telling people, so Macamille talking about all the good air. Yeah. And also, what's the name of the dude? They used to play football for the Raiders, the Bears, and the Chargers. He may still be playing for the Chargers. He played for Buffalo. Real good football player. Camille Mack. I forgot what city he's from. Like cities like that in Florida is where people pretty much got to go. Because if you're looking at the Metro Orlando area now, it's hard to find anything. It's hard to find anything under like 250, really under 300. It's still gonna go now like the Haines City, right? Haines City, some parts of like Polk County, that's more rural, less amenities. That you got to go way, 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 way out, like to the sticks. Like that's just what it is now, right? That's just what it is. So you'll be out there, but no amenities. No shopping, no nothing. You just got a big house on land, right? So then to go somewhere, you got to drive 45 minutes just to get to a grocery store. Like that's how people living now, right? So that's really how you sometimes got to get. So they have those in Florida, but you're not around nothing, right? But some people, they think that's like a good way to live. I never really was cool with that, but that's how some people are. They think like they doing it, they can live like that, right? So it is what it is. But yeah, just asset values have really gone up. Right. So that's why I tell people to really try to understand markets, because people will feed you anything. They'll feed you fake stories. They'll feed you fake narratives. And then because we don't really know, we'll bite on it. And it really don't make sense to how the actual situation actually works. So once you actually understand, nobody can feed because you know where to go to look at it. Like I say, if I want to talk about currencies, I just pull up my trading view and I look at my currency pairs. So if I see that the dollar's not being sold against these other currencies, I'm not going to entertain that the dollar is like has no value. Because if that was the case, they'll be selling it. Right? They'll be selling it. So that's what I think people got to realize, is that once you kind of understand how to diagnose and investigate a lot of this stuff, you realize, man, a lot of people just be on the internet just saying stuff because that's how they do their thing. Right? So it is what it is. Port St. Lucie. Yeah. It's going to be cheaper than Orlando, though. I guarantee you that. It's going to be cheaper than Miami, definitely. It's going to be cheaper than Tampa, definitely. It's going to be cheaper than Jacksonville, definitely. It's going to be cheaper than all the major metro areas, right? Same thing with the Gulf Coast. So all the major metro areas, asset values are sky high, right? I never believed that Tampa could get that expensive. Like, I just couldn't believe that, because I would have bought a home out there 20 years ago if I knew it was going to be like that. Because when I was in Tampa, nobody really wanted to be in Tampa like that. So it's going to always be cheaper than the major metro areas. Nothing is going to ever approach Miami real estate. Like, it's not even possible. You know, in Miami, they'll sell you a 2-1 for $500,000. Right? That's what, like in Miami, they'll really do that. In Miami, they'll sell you a 2-1 for $500,000. And that's what it is. And so there it is no trying to go under their price. The price is the price. That's Miami. If you don't want it, you ain't got to buy it. The price is the price of Miami. They'll sell you 2-1 for $500,000. That's what it is. You know what I'm saying? So you talking about getting a 3-2 or getting a 4-bedroom house in Miami. Man, you talking pushing almost $1 million. You know, I was telling somebody the other day, they selling homes in South Central for $1.5 million, right? All day, every day. And you in South Central, right? Over there where close to where Nip got shot at. You know what I'm saying? $1.5 million all day. Right? People make more money out there, yeah, but it's $1.5 million, bro. What's up to J-Way? X-Kept townhome we bought in Vegas 10 years ago for $100K. I know it's more double the value now. It used to be the Escape for Cali. Now it's not as good as a deal. I feel you. Yeah, a lot of people, even J-Way, before you was even born, most likely, because I know you're relatively young, a lot of people, that was the getaway from LA was Vegas. You know what I'm saying? That's why there's so many gangs out there now. But yeah, that spot is blown, and Vegas, I don't like how they built Vegas. It's too cookie cutter for me. You know what I'm saying? You may know what I mean. Vegas too cookie cutter. I don't like how they built it. But at one time, that's when you had to go, because you could get a home out there compared to what homes was in California. This was like 25 years ago. But I don't like the way they built up Vegas. Vegas too cookie cutter. I mean, all the houses out there look the same. Look like it's the same house. What's up to Donna Del Sol? Right? Got my house in 2009 during the recession. They were cheap then. Taxes have skyrocketed because the values are pretty much double. Yeah, Donna, they don't give y'all homestead exemption. Where y'all at? Anthony says those LA prices. No, those Miami prices too. Go to Miami. It's like that all the way out to Kendall. You know what I'm saying? That's Miami prices now. And those aren't even the nice homes. Nice homes is multi-millions. Pine Hills is $250 and up. $250 is cheap in Orlando. I can't find a lot in Orlando for $250. I'm finding a lot of stuff at $300 and up. So $250 is cheap in any market. That's a giveaway now, right? Because I used to live in Pine Hills. That's a giveaway, $250. So that's what I'm saying. And most people don't have that. They won't get qualified for the $250. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I'm saying, is that a lot of people, their income is their issue, not the dollar. but they'll buy into the dollar being the issue and not the income, and the fact that they're trying to do it all by themselves, and they definitely don't have enough money to do it by themselves. They need to get a partner. That's why I said big up to all my married people, because they the ones that got the houses, right? It's hard to get qualified at $250,000, $300,000, and you a single person making 60 grand a year. It's not impossible. It's going to be challenging, right? So that's what I'm trying to tell people. And then Dennis had also said, we're not talking about closing costs. Exactly. Now you can get into programs, but you got to get into a program. But again, we're not talking about closing costs, which is going to be $1,000 up front. So you just can't have the down payment. You got to have that plus all the closings and all the fees and yada, yada, yada. So people are not thinking about this type of stuff. You know, so they're going to find out, though, they're never going to buy a house. They'll find out. You know, it's way different than buying a car. So that's what I'm saying. When you are that 08, 09, that's never coming back. Not in the major markets. It's just not. So I think that's what a lot of people don't understand. Those prices are never coming back. I know somebody bought a fly townhome in Miramar for like $140. That thing now worth almost $500,000. It's real fly. They put travertine tile in that thing and everything. They really laid it out. That thing worth now almost $500,000 in Miramar. Real cold spot. Because you can be in Miami in like 10, 15 minutes. You know what I'm saying? But they bought it like 2010, 2011, right after the real estate crisis. So they got in for the low. It was a foreclosure. You can't find them kind of prices no more, bro. Like, you think you're going to find something for $140 in Miramar? It'll never happen. If not, it'll be a total tear down that you got to rebuild all the way back up. But it's not going to be something that you can just put, you know, 40, 50,000 remodel into it and be on your feet. Don't work that way no more. Them days over with, right? Those days are gone. It was somebody out here in my market trying to sell a home with no floors, no walls. It had been wired and that's it. No floors, no walls. And they were selling for $200,000. So you got to come in and put all the floors in there, and you got to come in and put all the walls in there. It had been torn down. It was a full remodel. It probably ran out of money. So now they're just trying to sell it for what they could get for it. And they wanted $200,000 for it. You know what I'm saying? So that's the market now, right? That's not going to change, right? People think, well, people going to lose their homes and that's going to make housing prices go down. No, them people just going to be on the street. That's not going to change. I feel you. Now, I don't think we're going to get 15% a year, because you should never, in my opinion, you shouldn't expect that on a house. So I don't think we're going to get 15 to 20% annual increases for year into, you know, infinity. I don't think it's going to work that way. I think it's going to start to even out, but I don't think it's going to go back down. But I don't think you're going to, because if I can get 15 to 20% on residential, I should buy residential and not even look at the overall market, right? Because overall market is only going to get me 8 to 9%. So I don't think that's sustainable, because normally you should look to get 3 to 5 on a house per year. You get exempt, they don't cover much. Our property tax, I'm almost double. I feel you. It's like that a lot of places though, Miss Del Sol. And then in Florida, not only do you got increase in property taxes, even though they claim they're going to get rid of it, but you also got increases in insurance. So it is what it is. It's just a market where asset values are really, really shot up. Great question. I think we'll get 3 to 5, right? That's what I would expect, right? So we can get under that, but I don't expect 15 to 20 into infinity. It's because the market is not designed to work that way, right? It's just really not, right? Because that's greater than what we can get out of the overall market. So that's why I tell people, Delta Bravo, learn the markets, and then the numbers will make sense when I know that I can go by the overall market. I'm supposed to get 8 to 10. So I shouldn't expect a home to get me 15 to 20, right? So if I get it, it's gravy, but I shouldn't expect that when I can go by the overall market. So if I want to get that out of a home, I should just buy homes and not buy the overall market, because I'm going to get 15 to 20. You know what I'm saying? And I get to control an asset. So that's what I'm saying. The numbers are not sustainable over time. That's the biggest thing I look for in investments, is how do those numbers work against benchmarks? Because if they're so higher over benchmarks, either they're phony or they're 1 in a million and they're not sustainable, because I know what the benchmarks are. So then I play everything off the benchmarks, which is going to be the treasury and the overall market, right? So everything else, it don't move me because, you know, I don't know if y'all see this because it kind of depends on what you look at. There's an oil company called Phoenix. I don't know if you've seen those commercials. I think they're doing they're doing like 13%, I believe. I think they're doing 9 to 13% return on a bond, right? So they have to go over the overall market, which is 8 to 10%. So I think they're doing 13%. We'll get 8 to 10% overall market, right? But then the question is the risk I'm taking with their bond worth just the 3 other percentage points? See? Because I'm taking on risk because if they're not successful, they can't pay the bond. And then it's not going to be a secure bond. What is it secured to? Right? So it can just be, you know, they just going to straight pay me out. So that they don't pay me, then they don't pay me. But they already got my money, though. Now I can take them to court, but then that's going to be money. So because I know what the benchmark is, I don't get caught up in nothing else. I just apply it to the benchmark. Right? So that's why I keep encouraging people to have this ability right here. Right? Be able to see through the issue. Right? So a guy says, I can give you a 13% bond. I'm taking on risk to get just 3 percentage points. Right? And then if it don't work out, I don't get nothing. Or do I get anything? How does that work? How is it structured? I can just say, man, I'm going to just take the 8 to 10% and just go to sleep at night and not have to worry about nothing. Right? I can just make that choice instead of sweating to get another extra 3%. Right? Especially if it's I wouldn't even look at that unless it was non-correlated returns. Right? So that's one scenario I wouldn't even look at it unless it was not correlated. So it was outside of my core stuff. And then again, do I even want the headache? I would prefer to do what Miss Williams has done and buy the actual oil well than maybe buy a bond. Right? I would prefer. Now, I may not have that kind of money, but they're only offering that to, what do you call that? Institutional investors, is that the name? So you got to have a net worth over a certain amount, and you got to show that you're making a certain amount of money per year. So that's really who that's being offered to. So I don't even know why they're showing it to me because I don't have that kind of money. But I wouldn't even look at that unless I had a lot of other things in place. Because again, 13%, it's accredited investors. Okay, my bad. Accredited investors, yeah, they cannot pay it. And if it's not secured by anything, then they just don't pay me. I would prefer to do what Miss Williams did, just own the whole oil well. And when it make money, it make money. And when it don't make money, it don't make money. But at least I own the well, right? But it take a different type of paper to get into that too. That's the type of stuff I want to get into. Just give me the whole well. I don't want to get a bond off your well because I know why they're trying to do this is because oil prices are so low, they can't go to their traditional markets and get financed. So now they're trying to go to just accredited people through the retail market, right? Because there's so little money now going to be put in exploration because the oil price is so low because the Saudis are pumping so much oil. So they're suppressing the price. So it's hard to get money for exploration now. So now they're going to just retail people because traditionally they wouldn't even talk to people like us, right? I'm getting YouTube ads for this stuff. So they're going to anybody they can find. But I don't like the deal. And it don't work for me, but it might work for somebody else. But I want the whole whale, right? Give me the whole whale. And so if we're going to have good years, bad years, but at least I control the whale, right? I want the whole thing. But it take a different type of money to get that. So that's pretty much going to be it. Appreciate everybody for coming through. Y'all stay blessed. Talk to you later.